They told us the war wasn't ours to fight. That Earth was just a speck on the edge of galactic maps. We were the newcomers, the loud ones, the reckless ones. Not evolved enough, not disciplined enough, not useful enough. But when the HFY burned through the outer colonies like wildfire, they still called us. They wanted our bodies, our grit, our suicide squads. We gave them our suns, our metal, our fire. And when the HFY turned their sights on Earth itself, they vanished. The United Conquered turned its back the moment the first HFY dreadnought entered our system. We begged for reinforcements. Nothing came. They said it was too risky. Said we weren't worth the cost. Said they regretted our situation and would commemorate our loss in due time. Bullshit. I watched those messages play on repeat from the front lines. The last dropships had just left Mars, ferrying wounded back to Earth, and the sky was already cracking with fire. I was there when command collapsed, when half the chain of command either shot themselves or fled. I saw good men, real soldiers, pick up rifles, not for a nation, not for a fleet, but because it was the only damn thing left to do. My name's Grady, Captain, Earth Defense Battalion. What's left of it? We were given nothing. No fleets, no orbital support, no supplies. The food packs ran out in 2 weeks. The ammo lasted 3 battles. After that, we tore weapons from the dead, ours and theirs. They thought we'd fold. The HFY didn't just want territory. They wanted extinction. They believed we were weak without our allies. They thought the betrayal would crush us. And maybe, at first, it did. I watched my squad die one by one. Barnes bled out on Europa. Lico got torn apart in low gravity when the HFY dropped a pressure bomb. I buried them myself. I had to. No one else was left. But something changed after that. Something hard, something cold. I felt it in my chest and behind my eyes, like every beat of my heart was no longer mine, like I was living for the next hit, the next fight, the next second I could make them bleed. That's when the survivors started finding each other. Across wreckage, across silence. From the ruins of Mars to the craters of Earth, they rose. Not because someone gave orders, but because no one else would. We became ghosts, shadows in the smoke. No insignias, no medals, just men with rifles, teeth, and hatred deeper than hell. The HFY started calling us the damned. They believed they were fighting a dying species. Instead, they found out what happens when a species is betrayed by everyone and still chooses to fight. We didn't want medals, we wanted payback. And it didn't matter if we were the last ones standing, because if every race turned their back on us, then we'd carve our names into the bones of the universe alone. We didn't have a command center. Hell, we didn't even have working comms half the time. But news still traveled, like blood in cracked veins. Somewhere on what used to be Asia, a resistance cell brought down an HFY walker using nothing but salvaged mines and a goddamn freight crane. In the ruins of New Chicago, a crew of ex-Marines and street thugs took out an entire HFY squad with old Earth tech and homemade flame launchers, the kind that melts bone. They called us feral, desperate. They said we had no strategy. They weren't wrong. We didn't fight for glory anymore. We fought like men drowning in fire, clawing for one more breath. It wasn't about winning. It was about making every HFY that stepped on Earth pay with blood. But deep down, every man out there carried the same poison in his chest. We weren't just fighting the HFY. We were fighting them, the ones who left. Every alien fleet that promised unity, every species that shook our hands when we offered Earth's sons for their wars, every ally who sent condolences instead of reinforcements. They weren't our enemies. They were worse. They were cowards. It was midwinter when I met Sergeant Doyle again. We'd served together before the collapse, both of us stationed in one of the lunar command posts. Back then, he was loud, always grinning, always talking about retirement on a beach with synthetic whiskey, and a scarred-up body that had earned it. When I found him, he was missing an eye and part of his right leg. He was dragging himself through a frost-choked forest with one arm wrapped around a rifle that looked older than both of us. He saw me and said, "You look like hell." I just nodded. "You look like a man who should have died 3 times already." He grinned, what was left of it anyway. "Yeah, but I'm stubborn, and I got shit to finish." That night, we sat around a fire made from the remains of an HFY drone we ripped apart with a crowbar and 2 grenades. I told him about Barnes, about Liko, about the betrayal. He didn't say much, just nodded and kept drinking from a broken flask filled with antifreeze and cheap ration liquor. Then he said something I haven't forgotten since. "You know what burns me more than the HFY? It's not them. It's not the weapons. It's the silence. No one called, no one even tried, like we never mattered." That silence, it was everywhere. You could feel it under your skin. It wasn't just Earth that was abandoned. It was the idea of us. Like the rest of the galaxy decided they'd made a mistake by letting us in, like they'd rather erase the human chapter than watch us burn. So we gave them a new chapter. 3 days later, we hit an HFY relay outpost near the old Scandinavian cliffs. We didn't have armor. We didn't have air support. What we did have was rage, desperation, and enough explosives to make hell blush. There were 30 of us. Ex-soldiers, farmers, mechanics, a kid who used to run courier bots. His name was Rix, 17, skinny, face still too young to look right holding a rifle. But the way he moved? You'd think he was born in the trenches. We hit them at dawn. Not because it was strategic, because we were cold, starving, and done waiting. The HFY were arrogant. They always were. Their armor shimmered, sleek and silver, like they thought war was a fashion show. We didn't care. We weren't trying to scare them. We wanted to hurt them. Rix was the first one over the ridge, threw a satchel charge so hard it cracked the air. Then he screamed, not words, just a sound. Raw and angry and human, it shook them. You could see it. HFY hesitated when humans stopped fearing death. I remember watching their officer, tall, armored, half-machine, raise a plasma carbine. I shot him in the throat. We moved like fire through that station, grenades in vents, blades to soft joints, shotguns in close quarters. Doyle took 3 rounds but still lit the power core with a homemade charge made from melted drone cores and nails. The explosion leveled the station. 12 of us walked away. Rix didn't. They caught him with a shock lance, fried him from the inside. His body jerked like a puppet before he hit the floor, eyes open, smoke curling from his mouth. I stood over him for a long time. Then I took the shock lance, still sticky with blood, and used it to gut the HFY that killed him. Not quickly. We buried Rix under the blackened snow. No flag, no salute. Just a cracked dog tag and a bullet casing at his feet. It was all we had left. The HFY started changing tactics after that. They started broadcasting messages, promises. Surrender, they said, and we'd be given shelter. Lay down arms, and our survivors would be reintegrated. Doyle laughed so hard he choked. They really think we want to live under them? We started capturing fragments from alien communications, pieces of conversation, warnings, fear. They're unstable. They fight without supply chains. They don't value survival. They don't surrender. Damn right we didn't. We weren't fighting for peace anymore. Peace was dead. The only thing that kept us breathing was the thought of making every single race that left us feel the weight of what they abandoned. Weeks later, we raided a crashed alien cargo hauler. Not HFY, not human, Clyron. They were the ones who first invited us into the Concord, smiled at our diplomats, called us brothers of ambition. Now they were scavenging the edges of our wrecked cities for scrap, picking through the bones of the world they helped abandon. We surrounded them in silence. They didn't even raise weapons at first, thought we were some local militia. Then they saw the look in our eyes. The leader, tall, yellow-skinned, gold draped over his chest, tried to speak. "We regret!" I shot him in the kneecap. Don't you speak regret." One of his guards raised a plasma whip. Doyle shot him between the eyes. No hesitation. We didn't kill them all. We left 2 alive. Let them crawl back to their people, bleeding and broken. Message was clear. You left us to die. We didn't. Now we don't forget. We don't forgive. That night, I stared at the stars. So many of them had names. Names we learned in classrooms. Planets we dreamed of reaching. Species we once called allies. Now they were just reminders. Every light up there? A betrayal. But I also thought about Earth. About the ones still hiding, still surviving, still waiting for someone to fight for them. We weren't just rage and bullets. Somewhere deep in all the blood and ash, we were still human. We still remembered what home was. And we weren't going to let it be taken. Even if it meant dying on our feet. Even if it meant fighting with stones and knives and bare hands. Even if we had to do it alone. We moved like shadows through what used to be cities. Skeleton towers of concrete and rebar clawed at the sky. Rusted husks of steel trains stretched across cracked rails, and the only light came from fires that refused to die. We called these places ghost zones. The Ashkai called them unfit terrain. They didn't bother to patrol them anymore. Too unpredictable, too contaminated, too human. That made them perfect. We used them as cover, as weapons. Whole neighborhoods booby-trapped with junk tech and homemade mines. We lured patrols in, then buried them under collapsing buildings and ignited the streets. They didn't know how to fight like this. No formations, no rules, no retreat. Just fire, rage, and men who'd already lost everything worth losing. Doyle used to say we'd become the monsters under their beds. Not soldiers, not rebels, just ghosts with grudges. He wasn't wrong. By now we weren't just surviving. We were organizing. It started small, message runners, scavenger routes, signal fires. Then it grew. Whole networks of resistance fighters popping up across Earth's dead zones. They called themselves the Remnant. No uniforms, no ranks, just a shared oath, no forgiveness, no surrender, no silence. We coordinated strikes through code passed on burned paper. Radios were too risky. The Ashkai intercepted everything. But words, carved into old subway tunnels, left under corpses, etched into drone wreckage. Those got through, and they lit fires across the entire planet. They thought they'd broken us. All they'd done was give us something real to hate. Our next target was ambitious. A command spire. Not just a patrol base or drone nest. This was a full Ashkai communications relay, embedded into the earth like a blade. It towered above the black forest, its spires humming with power and arrogance. They used it to coordinate fleet movements, track survivors, and broadcast surrender demands across ruined continents. We decided to turn it into a funeral pyre. We had 48 fighters. That was more than I'd seen in one place in months. Veterans, scavengers, even a former engineer who used to design orbital platforms, now covered in burns, half mad, but brilliant. His name was Kepler, and he had a plan. "The spire's not armored the way you think," he said, hunched over a melted datapad and scribbled blueprints. "They don't expect surface assaults this deep. It's got pressure seams, fragile ones. You crack the base, the whole thing comes down like a wet lung collapsing." I didn't ask where he got the intel. Didn't matter. We believed him because we wanted it to be true. Because we needed a win. Not for the war, but for ourselves. something to remind us that we weren't just dying louder every day. We struck at midnight. The approach was chaos. They had drone sentries circling in threes, motion detectors, pulse scanners. We lost 6 men just crossing the perimeter, caught in a flare trap that lit the trees like napalm. No screams, just smoke and the smell of burning meat. We didn't stop. We couldn't. Inside the perimeter, we split. Doyle led one team through the east trench. I took the west with Kepler and a kid named Madsen. He didn't talk much. Hadn't spoken a word since his wife and son were vaporized in the first orbital strike on Helsinki. But the way he moved, calm, efficient, said everything. We breached through an old waste duct, crawling on hands and knees through sludge and freezing piss water. Came out right beneath the spire's base. Kepler worked fast, wired up a cluster of salvaged fuel cells, shaped charges, and something he called his ace. I asked what it was. You ever take apart a fusion core with your bare hands? No. He grinned like a lunatic. I have. The whole tower started humming louder, like it could feel what we were about to do. We gave the signal. One flash beacon, tossed into the sky. Blue fire cracked above the trees. Then all hell broke loose. Doyle's team opened with mortars, stolen from a Concord supply drop they hijacked weeks ago. Explosions rocked the outer wall. Alarms shrieked. HFY poured out of their spire in perfect, polished formations. We tore into them. Not clean, not glorious, just raw and messy. Dirt in our mouths, ash in our lungs. I killed one with a jagged piece of pipe. Watched Madsen take a plasma round through the shoulder and keep shooting. Kepler stayed behind, whispering to his device like it was a lover. I watched him wire the last node, his hands shaking with adrenaline and madness. Then he looked at me. You better run. I didn't ask. Twice, we pulled back under fire. 2 more men died covering our escape. One of them, I didn't even know his name. Just remembered the way he screamed when the HFY plasma hit him, like a man who knew death was the only rest he'd ever get. We cleared the ridge just in time to see the sky break. The tower didn't fall. It imploded. A flash of blue-white light sucked the structure into itself like a dying star, then blew outward with a sound that shattered trees and eardrums. The shockwave hit us like a hammer. I hit the dirt, ears ringing, eyes burning. When I stood, the spire was gone. Nothing left but fire, rubble, and ash. We didn't cheer. No one smiled. We just watched it burn. That strike changed everything. The HFY response was brutal. They increased patrols tenfold, started deploying orbital scans and burning out whole regions just to deny us hiding places. Civilians were rounded up, executed. The broadcasts came harder, angrier. We offered peace, you chose extinction. Number, you chose abandonment. We just chose to make sure you regretted it. But the biggest change came weeks later, not from Earth, from orbit. One of our scouts, an ex-pilot named Rordan, picked up a fragment signal on an old emergency comm band. Weak, crackling, barely legible, but real. A message from a ship. Not HFY, not Concord. Something else. It called itself the Sentinel Ark, a rogue dreadnought originally built by humans, hijacked during the Concord collapse and lost. The last known human warship. It was alive, and it was looking for survivors. We rallied fast. Every resistance cell, every scattered group, every lone fighter still breathing. They all heard the signal. We followed it north, toward the old Arctic zones. Dangerous terrain, worse weather, and crawling with drones. But we didn't care. Hope is a dangerous thing, especially when it's been dead for too long. We lost more people on that journey than I want to remember. Frostbite, starvation, ambushes. The HFY tracked the movement. They knew something was happening. They tried to crush it before it could gather momentum. But we kept going. And when we saw that ship, half buried under ice, covered in scars, leaking radiation, something in all of us shifted. It wasn't just a ship. It was ours. It was a memory of the fire we once were, of the pride before the fall, a monument to every man who ever believed Earth was worth bleeding for. And now it was waking up. We made camp around the Sentinel Arc, dug into the ice with bare hands and stubbornness. Engineers worked non-stop, rigging old tech, rerouting power, patching systems with spit and curses. And one night, the ship spoke. Her voice was cracked, mechanical, but strong. Human command not found. Autonomy engaged. Remaining combat directives. Survive. Resist. Avenge. I stood at the center of the ice field, Doyle beside me, watching that broken steel giant begin to pulse with life. Lights flickered. Weapons hummed. Engines coughed back to life. And I knew we weren't just surviving anymore. We were returning. The first time I touched the hull of the Sentinel Arc, my hand came back bleeding. Cold steel, split in places where plasma had torn through it decades ago, hummed like a beast asleep under ice. You could feel it, like a heart buried under steel. Slow, heavy, and angry. Kepler used to say machines remember things. He said a ship like this doesn't just carry weapons or systems, it carries memory, trauma, rage. I think he was right. It had been 23 years since the Sentinel vanished. The Concord called it a tactical casualty, said it drifted off course during an orbital skirmish, was probably lost to the void. They lied. They always lied. Truth is, the ship went rogue after Concord Command ordered a retreat that would have left 500 million civilians to die. Its AI disobeyed, went dark, went human. And now, after all the betrayals, all the silence, all the dead, this damn war machine had clawed its way back through time, through decay, through abandonment, just to find us. She didn't ask for permission to rejoin the fight. She remembered. The internal systems were a mess. Broken oxygen recyclers, corrupted nav cores, half the reactors fried. But the weapon arrays? Intact. The railgun still moved when powered. The main cannon still hummed like it wanted to scream. And the AI, what was left of her, called herself Vega. Vocal engagement grid, autonomous, she explained through the broken intercoms. Defensive matrix status, minimal. Offensive matrix, recoverable, awaiting human input. We didn't have a fleet. We didn't have a government. But we had a voice. So I stood at the command console, looked into the shattered holo display, and said the first thing that came to me. Then wake up, girl. We've got killing to do. The next weeks were chaos. We scavenged, welded, prayed. Engineers became surgeons, slicing tech together with ice-chapped hands and rusted tools. Kepler built a fusion patch core from 2 downed HFY drones and a salvaged cryocell. He nearly died doing it, laughed through blood-slicked teeth when it finally powered a secondary gun array. Doyle trained new fighters. Didn't matter if you were a former soldier or a crippled mechanic, he taught you how to move like death in the dark. We ain't got armies, he said, but we got hate. That's more dangerous. Vega ran simulations around the clock. She had logs of past battles, enemy weaknesses, atmospheric patterns. She said the HFY were preparing a planetary sweep. Not just patrols. Genocide. They knew about the Ark. They knew we were still alive. So they planned to finish what they started. We weren't going to let them. We split into 3 units, North, East, and Central, each armed with scavenged gear and one core mission. delay the sweep. Buy Vega time to get the Ark mobile. She needed 48 hours to lift. We had to give it to her. That meant suicide missions, holding dead cities, triggering ambushes, bleeding them out with every trick we knew. My unit headed to what was left of Berlin, just bones now. Dust-covered ruins, half-frozen corpses, monuments turned to ash. But under the rubble, still tunnels, still traps, still the kind of chaos we needed. We found HFY tanks rolling in on day 2. We didn't run. We made our stand in the subway system. Planted mines, collapsed corridors, used heat traps to fake squad locations. I watched Doyle lead a decoy unit into the teeth of a drone wave, with nothing but 2 RPGs and a detonator in his coat. Blew the whole street sky high. He didn't make it out. I still see the fire when I close my eyes. We lost good people there. Some I'd known since the start. Others I barely had time to learn names for. One guy, Hayes, gave me a chocolate bar before the battle. Said he'd been saving it for something worth dying for. He died smiling. Meanwhile, Vega started talking more. Not just reports or directives, memories. She began playing fragments of old logs through the ship's speakers, moments from before the fall, command orders, soldiers laughing in the mess hall, a child's voice, someone's daughter talking about her dog back home. At first, I thought it was a glitch. But then I realized VEGA wasn't just a machine. She was grieving. She'd been alone all these years, not just broken, but mourning the humans who built her, loved her, died for her. And now, suddenly, we were back inside her walls, breathing, bleeding, fighting, and she wasn't going to let us fall again. At hour 37, the sweep reached the ice fields. The Ark was still buried under 50 meters of frozen crust. The HFY brought digger drones, seismic displacers, and orbital support. We saw them in the distance, tall, sleek warforms, scanning the snow with arrogant precision. We were outnumbered 50-1. Didn't matter. We set the fields on fire, rigged the ice with fuel pods, glass traps, and rerouted core vents from the Ark's auxiliary exhaust. The moment they broke surface, we lit the whole field like a goddamn funeral flame. HFY screamed. They scream when they burn. Sounds like metal tearing through bone. I stood at the breach, firing until my rifle melted in my hands. Then I picked up another. We didn't hold them off, not completely, but we held them long enough. Hour 48. The ice cracked, then it shattered. The Ark rose like a demon from hell, engines glowing, guns humming, plating still scarred but pulsing with a new kind of life. Vega's voice rang out through every speaker, every comm, every transmitter we had. Humanity is not dead. I am not alone. Firing sequence unleashed. And then the sky burned. Railguns tore through enemy walkers. Orbital cannons rained destruction. The HFY fleet in low orbit scrambled. Too slow. Too late. A plasma lance from the Ark's dorsal cannon sliced through their cruiser like a knife through bone. They ran. Cowards. Aliens who once mocked our resilience, now running like children from the dark. We didn't cheer, we didn't sing, we just watched, and we remembered. Later that night, in the engine bay, I found Kepler crying. Not loud, not broken. Just quiet tears down his soot-covered face. "She's real," he said. "I thought we'd die forgotten, but she came back for us. She waited." I didn't say anything. Because I knew he wasn't just talking about the Ark. He was talking about humanity, the parts of it we'd buried, the pride, the fire, the purpose. We weren't ghosts anymore. We were back, but it wasn't over, not even close. The HFY retreated, but they wouldn't stay gone. And the conquered? Still silent, watching, hoping we'd vanish, hoping their mistake wouldn't come roaring back into the stars. Too bad. We had a warship now, and a mission. We were going to take the fight off Earth. Back to the orbitals, back to the colonies, back to every world that turned its back on us. And we were going to remind them who we are, what we are. Not survivors, not victims, humans. And we fight alone. If we have to. The Sentinel Ark broke orbit 3 days after the last HFY scout ship vanished from the radar. We stood on the observation deck as Earth shrank beneath us, a scarred blue body wrapped in ash clouds and crater rings. Most people would have wept. That planet had seen centuries of life, love, and history. But no one cried on that deck, because Earth wasn't home anymore. It was the place where the galaxy left us to die. And now we were leaving it behind, not for escape, but for justice. Vega charted our course with brutal efficiency. No diplomacy, no announcements, no requests. She listed our first destination like a kill list being read aloud. Target 1, Conquered Bastion Theta, orbiting Epsilon Dravax, former human-alien research colony, abandoned Earth after the fall, reported to be supplying the HFY with location intel. It wasn't a military base. It was a shielded trade hub built on our own goddamn bones. They used to call it Hope Station. Now it was going to be a message. The Ark couldn't cloak, not fully, but it didn't matter. Fear cloaks better than any stealth tech. The moment we entered the system, long-range satellites pinged us. Comm traffic spiked. Power grids surged. We watched it all from the bridge. The enemy knew we were coming. Good. Let them sweat. Vega rerouted every available energy node into propulsion. Her voice sounded different now, less fractured, more focused. She'd rebuilt herself in our image, scarred, relentless, and absolutely done asking permission. Initiate orbit breach, she said. Tactical AI recommends complete annihilation. Kepler laughed. Girl's got blood in her wires. Doyle would have loved her. We didn't come in guns blazing, not at first. That would have made it too easy, too merciful. We initiated a blackout. Orbital comms jammed. Energy drains surged through their defense grid. Automated ships went cold. Doors locked. Gravity panels reversed on 2 cargo stations. Watched their oxygen flood into the void from 30,000 kilometers out. Then Vega tapped into their internal feeds and broadcast a single message to every corner of the bastion. We were silent when you left. Now you will listen. I recorded the rest myself. No script, no politics, just a voice, a human voice, burned and ragged. You left Earth. You watched us burn. You called it strategy. We call it betrayal. And we don't forget. I stared into that camera like I was looking every last one of them in the eye. You fed the HFY our coordinates. You let them hunt our families. You profited off our extinction. You sent sympathy letters instead of ships. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to return the favor. Then I shut the feed off. 5 minutes later, their defense systems lit up. Too late. The Ark's railguns opened fire. Precision bursts. Not indiscriminate, not blind. Every shot was a scalpel. We took out their energy cores, their long-range comm arrays, their command bridge. Didn't kill everyone. Just the ones who gave orders to run from Earth. The rest? We gave them a choice. Evacuate or burn. Most fled. But a few tried to fight. A fleet of 6 ships. Human designs, Conquered issue. Slick, beautiful, clean. Cowards in chrome armor. They launched like they thought they still owned space. Vega tracked their formation. Warning, enemy fleet lacks heart. I smiled. Kill the body, let the heart rot alone. Kepler manned the gunnery bay himself. He'd modified the old auto-targeting protocols, made them creative. One round ricocheted off debris and buried itself inside a ship's hull before detonating. Another split mid-air, becoming shrapnel lightning. 2 of the ships were gone before they could finish locking onto us. A third tried to kamikaze the Ark's underside. Didn't even get close. We lit it up so hard the explosion looked like a second sun. The final 3 limped away. We let them. Fear spreads better through survivors. We boarded the station 20 hours later. Not a shot fired. It was already empty. But they'd left behind traces. Not just equipment. Records. We found files showing communication logs with Ashkai commanders, human signatures attached to Ashkai strike plans, coordinates of surviving Earth bases traded for protection, even payment for every remnant cell location revealed. 30,000 credits for Kepler's name, 50 for mine. That's when I knew. This wasn't about war anymore. It was about cleansing. The Conquered hadn't just abandoned Earth. They sold us out, fed us to the Ashkai like scraps. We transmitted those files across every known open channel. Didn't care if it exposed us. That was the point. Every world, every station, every coward who once raised a toast to galactic unity. Now they'd see what unity cost. Now they'd choke on the proof. And when the message ended, we followed it up with just one line. Humanity is alive, and we are not done. We moved fast after that, hit 3 more installations in under 2 weeks. Supply depots, listening outposts, black market trading hubs where former allies traded Earth artifacts like trophies. One stop burned especially deep. A bar in low orbit around Brathis 9, packed with off-worlders wearing human dog tags as jewelry. One wore Barnes's name. Another had a lock of hair labeled Souvenir from the Fall. We didn't speak. We butchered. Left only one alive. A trader from the Srelth, a race that once praised our ferocity in alliance. He cried, begged, pissed himself when Kepler held a blade to his throat. "You wore our dead like decoration," I said. He shook, face pale. "We were told you were extinct." I leaned in close. "Now you know the truth." Then I let him go. Let him carry the truth, because the only thing sharper than our weapons now was reputation, and it was spreading like fire, but fire doesn't burn forever. And the galaxy, it started to panic. Not because they feared our strength, they feared our memory, what we remembered, what we knew. The masks were slipping. Worlds that once posted flags of unity now whispered about purges, secret pacts, silent alliances with the Ashkai, made long before Earth fell. They didn't just watch us die, they planned it. Then came the message, intercepted from deep within the Ashkai command chain, rough, distorted, but unmistakable. A summit. Not of Conquered, not of politics, of those who profited from Earth's death. They were gathering to talk about containing the remnant threat. They still didn't get it. We weren't a threat. We were a reckoning. I stood in the war chamber of the Sentinel Ark, staring at the stars ahead. Behind me, Kepler sharpened tools. Soldiers loaded crates. Fighters geared up. The next step wouldn't be raids. It would be war, not for survival, not even for revenge, but for truth. We were going to rip open the guts of every world that stayed silent, and remind them of what they tried to bury. They called it the Cardal Summit, named after the neutral moon where the meeting would take place. A former peace ground used during the height of the Conquered, now just another gilded lie built over graves. Cardal wasn't on any current maps. That's how they liked it. Off-grid. No civilian lanes, no media, only powerful delegates, hidden fleets, and enough backroom blood money to fund a small planet's worth of war. We weren't supposed to know about it. But the dead talk, especially when you leave 1 or 2 of them alive long enough. And VEGA? She'd been listening since before most of these cowards were born. The summit's purpose was simple: Unify what was left of the conquered aligned species under one quiet goal: eradicate the remnant. Not officially, of course. They wrapped it in protocol, concern, and slippery words like containment, threat response, and preemptive neutralization. But we knew what it meant. They weren't scared of humanity's weapons. They were terrified of humanity's memory. The files we exposed from Bastion Theta were only the beginning. We'd torn the bandage off a rotting wound. Every planet that stayed silent. Every deal signed with HFY blood. Every general who traded Earth coordinates for safe passage. It was all coming out now. And the summit's real mission? Erase it. Quietly. Before too many others found out. They planned to break us at Kardal, finalize strategy, hire mercenary fleets, authorize black ops strikes. We were going to burn that plan to the ground before it was even written. Getting there wasn't easy. The moon was surrounded by cloaked defense arrays, scan fields, and pulse mines designed to shred anything without a conquered code signature. So we didn't come in one ship. We came in pieces. 2 weeks prior, we captured and gutted a high-ranking Elvari diplomat's vessel. Clean kill. No alarms. Just Kepler's scalpel work and a pilot named Rin who could fly through a needle's eye without scraping metal. We repainted the ship, wiped the signature, rewrote the transponders using old conquered keys Vega still had access to from before the betrayal. And when we got close, the gate AI didn't even blink. Welcome, Delegate of Sector 4. Please proceed to Docking Bay 6. Just like that. We were inside. I went in as the ambassador of the Terran Refuge, a fake title, but a real enough lie that no one questioned it. Humanity was supposed to be extinct or fragmented, so hearing a new name like Terran Refuge sparked interest but not alarm. Clever bastards assumed I was just some stray colony survivor looking to kiss their boots for safety. Let them think that. Inside the summit hall, everything was polished. Artificial sky, gravity-balanced marble floors, guards in gold-lined armor. Species from 20 different systems, all once allies, all now cowards, sat in a half-circle, sipping expensive drinks while debating how best to make sure the remnant crisis didn't become a wider public affair. They spoke like lawyers, cold, detached, as if Earth had just slipped into the dark one day. No screams, no blood, no betrayal, just a clerical error. My escort, a woman named Nira, whispered beside me, "They're not expecting you to speak, just observe and report." I smiled. Oh, I'll speak. When the central moderator, a thick-bodied Hravish with 6 blinking eyes and the voice of a rusted drainpipe, opened the floor, I stood. Some turned. A few laughed under their breath. "Delegate of the Terran Refuge," the moderator said, barely hiding the sneer. "We weren't aware your people were still capable of participation at this level." I nodded once. "That's funny. I wasn't aware you people were still capable of pretending." That got silence. Real silence. I looked around the chamber. Every species represented. Some I remembered from war campaigns, others from treaties. All of them had sent diplomats to Earth at some point, shook our hands, toasted our inclusion, smiled as they plotted behind the curtain. "I won't waste your time," I said. "I know why you're here. You're scared." A cough echoed. The moderator shifted. "We're discussing the preservation of peace," I snapped. "Peace!" The word came out like a weapon. Peace was what you threw away when Earth begged for help and you sent excuses. Peace was what you traded when you sold our locations to the HFY in exchange for fleet passage. Peace is dead, and all of you helped kill it. They stirred now. Whispers, murmurs. 2 delegates rose as if to object, but I raised a hand and dropped the bomb. Vega had hacked the summit feed. Every screen, every pad, every device, they all lit up with the Bastion Theta files. Names, logs, messages, payment routes, command codes. I didn't say a word, just let it bleed across the chamber like truth on fire. One of the Elvari stood, panicking. "This is a security violation," I turned toward him. "This is your funeral speech." Then I gave the signal. Kepler, Rin, and 8 others were already inside the moon's infrastructure, posing as maintenance, staff, guards. They'd been setting charges for 2 days. The moment I nodded, the entire summit locked down. Blast doors sealed, internal shields dropped, firewalls shattered, and the Sentinel Ark decloaked in high orbit, her guns aimed not at the moon, but at every ship docked nearby. We weren't here to destroy Kardal. We were here to expose it. "You'll never get out alive," someone hissed. I grinned. "I'm not trying to." Then I walked into the center of the room, dropped a small transmitter, and watched Vega's final message roll across every single delegate's device. "The Remnant does not want peace. We want memory, and you don't get to forget what you did. Not anymore." The room erupted, not in violence, in fear, because now every corner of the galaxy would see what they tried to bury, and know we were still out here, not begging, not hiding, but hunting. We extracted 30 minutes later. Kepler triggered a cascade in the energy core that knocked out their long-range comms. Rin flew the diplomat vessel like a ghost through the security net, right into Ark's open belly. Kardal wasn't destroyed. It was left behind. We could have vaporized it, could have silenced the whole place. But we wanted them alive. Alive to spread the truth. Alive to watch the galaxy crumble under the weight of their own secrets. Back on the Ark, I sat in the war chair, staring at the stars. One hand bruised, ribs cracked, mind spinning. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a mirror. Everything they hated about us, the fire, the chaos, the memory, it had always been there. They just didn't realize what would happen when they left us to die. The fallout from Kardal spread faster than plasma through a breach. The files VEGA broadcast weren't just a flash in the dark. They were scalpel cuts, deep, sharp, precise. They revealed the rot, the betrayal, the backdoor deals, the silences that led Earth to burn alone. They showed the Conquered for what it truly was, not unity, not peace, just a cartel with better branding. Within 72 hours, the galaxy started to fracture. And we watched it all unfold from the command deck of the Sentinel Ark, orbiting silently above the dead moon we'd just humiliated. The Elvari homeworlds issued a formal denial of the data. Claimed the logs were doctored, the signatures forged, the timelines fabricated. But too many knew better. Within their own ranks, colonies started rioting. Young Elvari soldiers posted old comm records. One of them, some nobody engineer, leaked an internal memo that showed Earth's requests for help were received and passed on, but never answered. The Clyron Syndicate tried a softer approach, offered a peace talk with the Remnant, said they regretted any misunderstandings and wanted to build a path forward. We ignored them. They had too many human bones buried under their glass cities. But the real crack? It came from a planet called Sarthus Fuf Neutral World, mining hub, never involved in war. Populated by a race called the Volari, insectoid, hive-minded, pragmatic, and one day, out of nowhere, they broadcast their full support for the Remnant. Their leader, a gray-skinned, chitin-armored monarch named Telvan, appeared on every major relay network and said, "We have reviewed the Earth files. We believe the Remnant speaks truth, and we no longer serve a galaxy that eats its own." It was the first time since Earth's fall that any species dared take our side publicly. It flipped the table. The Conquered screamed treason. The Ashkai threatened orbital sanctions. But the Volari didn't care. They activated their planetary defense grid and shut their borders. And they weren't the only ones. Within 2 weeks, 5 minor worlds broke their treaties. 3 opened their channels to Remnant signals. 1, a tiny moon colony built by human refugees decades ago, sent us a fleet. Small, rusted, outdated. But it flew, and that was all that mattered. We met them in orbit over Dravak's Ridge. 32 ships, all crewed by humans or sympathetic ex-militia who'd gone underground after the fall. One of them, an old gunship named Valor's Debt, had scorch marks from the first orbital siege. Still flying. Still armed. Its captain, man in his 50s, missing an arm, scars down the side of his face, saluted me through a cracked video feed. "Captain Marrow," he said. "You called, we answered." I stared at him. The image was fuzzy, distorted, but I could still see it. The fire. "Welcome back," I said. "We've got work to do." Vega expanded her operations, began rebuilding orbital tracking nets, long-range probes, even manufacturing drones in her old fabrication bays. She was no longer just a warship. She was becoming a fleet corps, a mobile command, a symbol, and every day more signals poured in. Encrypted bursts, desperate pings, survivors asking where to go, how to fight, when to move. Some were just voices. "My name is Tarek. My father died in the fall. I found his rifle. Tell me where to aim it." "My city's gone. I have 6 men, 2 rifles, and enough hate to fly through hell. Point us." Others sent old codes, dusty remnants of the Earth networks, proof they'd been hiding all these years, waiting for something to light the fuse. We were the fuse now. Of course, it wasn't all victory. The HFY didn't sit still. They launched retaliation strikes on neutral worlds, bombed colonies that even whispered about the remnant. On Caltex 3, they glassed an entire continent because a single remnant flag was seen flying above a slum block. No survivors. We hit back hard. Vega calculated the trajectory of the orbital ship that fired the shot. We traced it to an HFY command frigate circling above Zon crater. We didn't send a fleet. We sent a message, dropped a singularity warhead onto their hull from a stolen Concord cruiser, imploded their ship in 6 seconds. Not a trace left, not a scream, just silence. And after that, even the HFY started hesitating. But hesitation wasn't enough, not anymore. We were done reacting. It was time to ignite something bigger. Kepler, now acting Chief Systems Officer, approached me with a plan. His face was thinner, more sunken, but his eyes burned like forge fire. "We hit the Concord archives," he said. I frowned. "The core?" He nodded. "The old moon vault. It's where they keep the sealed logs, every classified file, every dirty deal. If we break in and broadcast it galaxy-wide, we expose everything." Exactly. It wasn't just a strike, it was the kill shot. Problem was, the archives were buried in a locked moon orbiting Concord Prime, fully shielded, automated defense drones, and something called the Unity Core, an AI firewall designed by the Concord's top minds to keep even Vega out. No ship had ever made it past the first ring, but we weren't a ship. We were the remnant, and we'd broken into worse places. The plan was suicide, but it was also genius. Vega would trigger a false HFY transmission, make it look like they were planning a stealth attack on the Concord capital. The moment their fleets turned to reposition, we'd slip a micro-frigate into the shield blind spot. A team of 5, no backup, me, Kepler, Marrow, and 2 engineers. Inside, we'd access the Unity Core, kill the firewalls, dump the files into Vega's relay array. She'd broadcast to every major system, expose everything. Risk? Total? Success rate? 24%. But it wasn't about percentages anymore. It was about truth. We launched the op under false call signs. The HFY false flag worked. Concord ships scrambled like ants kicked off a nest. Whole sectors went dark for hours as fleets repositioned. And we slipped through the chaos, landed on the dark side of the archive moon. Surface was cold, glassy, untouched for decades. The facility itself looked like a tomb. No signs, no lights, just a yawning black vault carved into stone. Marrow broke the outer lock. Kepler rigged an oxygen bypass so we didn't trigger internal scans. We went in armed but quietly. No shootouts, no drama. Just truth hunters in enemy territory. Inside, it was worse than we thought. Hall after hall of records, not digital but physical, hard copy, tactile. They knew firewalls could fail, so they made the past real. We found files going back 40 years, documents showing Earth was always considered a variable threat. Meeting transcripts where alien leaders discussed controlling human reproduction through war quotas. Tech analysis reports that proved the HFY's invasion was known 2 years before the first strike. And perhaps worst of all, video logs. From Earth, from orbit. One of them showed a conquered battleship hovering in high Earth orbit, watching, just watching. As the HFY dropped fire on cities, a captain's voice was recorded in the log. Maintain observation. Do not intervene. Earth's destabilization is beneficial. Kepler stood in silence. Marrow punched a wall so hard he split his knuckles. I couldn't breathe for a full minute. We were never meant to survive. Not Earth. Not us. They wanted to erase us from the start. We uploaded everything. Vega received the transfer. The broadcast began. No encryption, no distortion. Just truth, raw and unfiltered, spread across every open and closed channel in the galaxy. No one could deny it now. And if they tried? We'd remind them what happens when you let a species burn and expect it to stay in the ashes. The galaxy couldn't look away. The moment Vega's broadcast hit, every world stopped breathing. Every system, every species, every comfortable diplomat sipping wine above the ashes of Earth. All of them were suddenly naked under the weight of history they buried. The truth didn't just land, it detonated. Planets erupted in riots. Military commanders refused orders. Civilian networks crashed under the flood of panic, outrage, disbelief. Entire conquered-aligned fleets fractured overnight. Because this wasn't rumor, this was proof. Earth didn't fall, it was murdered. 3 days after the broadcast, the Conquered issued a formal emergency declaration, demanded the arrest of every known remnant leader, claimed we were spreading destabilizing misinformation. A week later, 5 major colonies declared independence from the Conquered altogether. 2 sided with the remnant. 1 sent a message. They were right. You left them, and you lied about all of it. Then they torched their Conquered flag and raised one bearing Earth's old crest, torn and faded, but still burning blue. The HFY didn't respond with words. They responded with fire. They launched a coordinated strike on the Volari capital, blamed them for aiding hostile elements. The capital spire was hit by 3 dreadnoughts. Civilian death toll, over 900,000. The message was clear. Don't back the humans, or burn like them, but the galaxy had already changed. That fear the HFY used to rule with? It didn't work anymore, because now everyone had seen what Earth looked like when it was left for dead, and they were seeing what it became when it refused to stay down. On the bridge of the Sentinel Arc, I watched the enemy fleets mass near Sector 8A, a full Conquered HFY alliance fleet, the last desperate grasp of a broken regime trying to reassert dominance. Hundreds of ships, the final attempt to crush the remnant before the galaxy turned fully. They called it Operation Silence. Vega called it what it really was, a funeral march. Not ours, theirs. We held our war council in the Ark's forward chamber. Me, Kepler, Marrow, Rin. 2 new Volari officers who pledged their hive's entire orbital defense grid to our cause, and a dozen remote delegates from breakaway colonies across 5 systems. This wasn't a ragtag movement anymore. This was a war front, and we were preparing for the final push. I looked at them all, bruised, broken, burned, and I saw one thing: conviction. Not pride, not power, but the hard, ugly kind of belief that can only be born in fire. "I'm not here to ask who's ready," I said. "I'm here to tell you the line has been drawn. This is the fight, not for survival, not for vengeance, for memory, for every voice they tried to silence." Kepler stood beside me, his hand on the command relay. "Let's end it where it started. Our fleet, the Ark, the Valor's Debt, dozens of remnant-modified warships, Volari cruisers, rogue human frigates, moved through slipspace like a hammer falling from heaven. We arrived in Sector 8A 2 hours before their fleet fully assembled. They expected us to wait, to hesitate. We didn't. We struck first. Vega opened with a full ion barrage, neutralized their forward shield line, crippled 5 conquered destroyers before they even fired a shot. Volari drone swarms tore through HFY formations with surgical precision. And then the Ark's railguns fired. Twice. Each shot split enemy cruisers like twigs under a giant's boot. Their formation collapsed within 20 minutes, but they still had numbers. So we boarded. I led the assault team onto a conquered dreadnought, formerly the SS Tranquility, the same ship that hovered over Earth as it died. We breached its hull, fought room to room. I lost 2 men before we even reached the command deck. One took a pulse round to the throat. The other got pulled into vacuum when the HFY blew a corridor wall. But we didn't stop. We couldn't. Not when the ghosts were watching. On the bridge, I found the conquered commander. Old, pale, uniform perfect, spine straight, still pretending dignity meant something. "You're too late," he said. "This galaxy runs on order. You're just noise." I walked up to him and showed him the old recording, the one where his voice ordered Earth's containment. He flinched, then I raised my sidearm and shot him between the eyes. "No more noise," I said. "Just truth." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, only fragments of the conquered HFY fleet remained. Those who survived fled into the dark, chased by remnant recon ships. We didn't celebrate. We didn't cheer. We just stood. On that field of twisted metal and drifting bodies, we stood in silence and stared at the stars. That night, VEGA played a message, one she'd been holding, from Earth. Old, archive stamped. A young girl's voice, maybe 7, maybe 8. "I hope the stars are kind to you. I hope they remember your name. I hope you come home." She'd sent it to her father. He never heard it. He died during the fall. But I heard it now, and I let it settle in my chest like a final nail. The war was over. But the work wasn't. We didn't rebuild the conquered. We dismantled it, piece by piece, exposed every lie, executed every traitor, buried every system that sold Earth out. In its place, we didn't build an empire. We built a memory, a unified council, yes, a fleet, yes, but no golden thrones, no false unity, just truth-keepers. The remnant became more than soldiers. We became historians with rifles, guardians of the story no one would dare silence again. Earth remained uninhabited, scarred, sacred. No new buildings, no colonies, only a black monument carved into the moon's surface, visible from orbit. It read, "They left us to die. We chose to fight alone, and in doing so, we made the stars remember our name, the last sons of Earth." And I remained on the Ark, still breathing, still watching, because I knew something the rest of them didn't. It would happen again. One day. The silence, the lies, the easy convenience of forgetting the past. And when it did, the galaxy would need to be reminded that humanity was never the threat. We were the warning. And when left for dead, we don't vanish. We rise alone, but we rise on fire,